Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moledzki.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow, and to contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
Yep. If you want to find us on the internet, family, if you're just joining us, our website is trustthejourney.today. That's our website and our Instagram. So go there, like, comment, engage with us. We want to hear from you. If you want to join the Trust the Journey family and more intimately participate in these conversations we're having and get support, we have a Patreon community called the Trust the Journey family, and we welcome you to join us anytime. All you have to do is donate on Patreon in any amount, and we will add you to that private Facebook group.
I have to say thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the show. You really do make this show happen. So thank you very much. And I do love every one of you. You're just a wonderful group of people. Mm-hmm. And I invite any of our listeners out there to please come on and join the Trust the Journey family. And you'll meet and engage with a bunch of other really loving, caring, and nurturing souls who are looking to grow and share together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've made a decision to start looking for sponsors. The show, we're looking to expand. We want to grow. We've been putting in our time. We passed a big goal a little while back, which is our 100 episode mark. And we want to go, okay, this is the next step. So if you're interested in supporting the show in other ways and you think you might be a good fit, or if you know anybody who might be a good fit for our program, we're looking for sponsors or advertisers or anybody we might align with.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. I'm excited for that. I feel like it is time, and we will only take on sponsors just so that the audience knows and hears this directly from us. We will only take on sponsors that feel like an aligned values fit. So much like other people we admire in the podcasting space, we want to use our advertiser slots as ways to add additional value to you and them and ourselves, so the win-win-win is created. Speaking of win-win-win, I can't not mention Kimberly Joy Voice. She's amazing. She is KimberlyJoyVoice.com. If you need any audio editing, podcast editing services, she's the bomb. So reach out to her. And yeah, if you want to find us personally on the old internet, Jay is on Instagram at Jason_Moledzki. And all my stuff is at MelanieCurtis.com.
So, not to forget, Melanie is a keynote speaker. If you're looking to engage with her positivity and her shining ball of light, if you would like her ball of light to radiate upon your community, you can reach out to her. And I am working with a wonderful group of people called the Desert Soul Collective, and we're putting on events in the southwestern part of the U.S., and that's very exciting. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up this fall, so stay tuned for more on that.
Yeah, more and more. It's good stuff.
Today we're talking about exactly some of the things that have led us here: ritual and ceremony. Things that we do ritually, things that we do ceremonially. What do we do in our lives that provide the structure and the backbone of who we are and help to give us that they either help us to grow and change, or they help us to have some consistency in our lives that sometimes can very much feel like there isn't. You know, there's with change as the true constant. Ritual and ceremony can be just so important. So I want to start there.
Yeah.
And see where this goes.
Yeah, yes. And I would love to hear from you first, honestly, Jay, because I didn't think about it like that initially. It makes complete sense, this notion of doing things ritually and ceremonially as a grounding exercise. That like, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, duh, of course. Yup. Shaking my head, right? But what I
Yeah.
wrote down were things like weddings, graduations, like what are these ceremonies, rituals, like those types of things. But yeah.
There's such a scale, right? Like the
Yeah.
scale from the smallest little thing to like how we fold our napkin to the biggest celebration or ceremony that we may ever attend in our life, which could be thousands of people, could be worldwide. It's from the tiniest thing to the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the whole concept that is really worth kind of paying heed to and taking a moment to pull back and go, oh yeah, making my bed every day is a ritual that I do in a particular way that structures the way that I feel about myself and how I start my day. And it may seem like a small little thing, but in relative to, say, a wedding or like a graduation or some, like a rocket ship launch or something, like there's this infinite scale. And I'll use one of our favorite jokes from PD Factory Team. It's a Jessica joke. So anybody who knows Jessica might be able to remember this one. Is it hot dog awesome? Is that what we're talking about here? Or is this like space shuttle awesome? Which end of the scale are we on? Because hot dogs, hot dog awesome. You're like, I love a good hot dog, and then the other end, you're like, man, this is like a spaceship, which is freaking awesome. Right. But both of those are awesome. And our ritual has that same range to it. It can be anything from how we sit down to engage when we pick up a phone or have a call to the biggest moments of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a definite make my bed each day person because of exactly what you just described. It creates an energy in my space, in my sanctuary space that feels more together, that feels more, I don't want to use the word in control because control doesn't necessarily feel like a warm word to me when I'm talking about that, but it's nice.
Can I offer I think it's like a predictable pattern, right? When there's like a level of predictability, there's a certain amount of comfort that comes. Like if we can anticipate the waves, like the ebb and flow, then they're not throwing us, and we can ride them. And all the little actions that we do, the ritual of like placing our knife and fork on the table next to our little breakfast, or how we butter our toast, like those little details may be subconscious, unconscious, or they may be very conscious about how we focus or honor each part of the things that we do. And I'll use yoga as an example. If I may, because that's like a morning ritual for a lot of people to begin the day with some movement and some flow. And it's almost in some cultures, it's religious. Yoga is a religious practice and it's a body movement ritual. So it's ceremonial to like move into this day of existence of here I am in life again, looking at the world through these eyes that I've been given. And I'm going to choose to engage it with this set of processes of yoga, meditation. Another one, I start almost every single day with a meditation, minimum 10 minutes, and as much as 30 minutes of just entering the space. And I love ritual and ceremony. I love it. It's so, for me, I can just ramble on. I'm going to give you I'm going to pause for a second.
No, I love it. Rambling. I love it. I really was curious why you posed this. I'm always very interested in the motivations behind things. And I find there's so much insight we can extract from anything that we do, whether it's ritual or ceremony or not. So when you posed the subject, I just liked it in general. I just was like, yes, let's do that, even though I didn't necessarily have ideas ready or whatever. But I'm curious, why did you bring that forth this time?
When we were scheduling this call, I was in Helsinki with my tattoo artist.
Oh, cool.
And so I was in a ritual setting of a practice, which is for me, the way that I approach tattoo work is it's a meditation. I'm very connected with the artist who's creating the work. We co-create the work. We work together on the idea, and it's a very painful process, especially some of the one that I had done recently. Different areas of the body have hurt more or less. And so I'm not bragging in any way. 88 hours of tattoo work now. So that's time where you're consciously awake while somebody is injecting needles, repeatedly into your skin. And it's very ritualistic. It's very ceremonial. And I just had a bunch of work done on my belly, and it's a very tender area. And my belly, breathe in and out, everything moves and the muscles respond. And so the reason the topic came up when we were saying, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? I'm like, well, I'm deep in this ritualistic space of like merging with somebody else, combining energy, and he'll lay down the line of tattoo on my exhale. And then I'll take an inhale, and then he'll lay down the next line on the exhale. And so we're like rich for hours and hours and hours and hours, like 7 hours straight.
Wow.
It's like stop to take a pee for 5 or 10 minutes, but then back at it 7 hours straight. So this is, it's ritualistic, it's ceremonial, it's deeply spiritual.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of intent behind it. That's the way I do it. I have friends that like to just grab a pin and start poking and make little tattoos on their ankle or whatever. A different way. Everybody is welcome to do their life their own way. But
right.
For me, that it's very ritualistic.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Oof. Wow. I'm just trying to even empathetically imagine that. I have 2 small tattoos on my body that are on the top of my foot. And
Ouch.
Yeah, it's the only place I ever wanted a tattoo. So I still I love it. I love my tattoos the best. But yeah, wow, I can't even imagine.
Would you be willing to share what they are?
Oh, yeah. Well, I say it's like more than one, because basically I wanted a blue and green sun. I wanted a sun that was, for me, representative of skydiving and just my time in Australia, which was when I studied abroad there. And we've spoken about this at a much earlier episode on the podcast. And it was just a time in my life where I really came into my own and was on my own and learned more about my capability, made more friends, and absolutely became a real skydiver because I got my license, I got through my student training, and I really made the effort to make it happen myself. And so this also connected to, I don't know, for those of you who have listened to my Audible book or read my book, there's basically an entire chapter, an entire column that's quite long where I write about my relationship with the sun. And so my tattoo is it's very representative of all those things that are very meaningful to me. But anyway, the first time I got any tattoo work, I was in New York City with some girlfriends and we were like, let's get a tattoo. And I just went into the store and I was like afraid. I knew what I wanted, but I was like, oh my God, I don't know, I want to get it. So I got this like red and yellow thing that was like a sunburst, and it looked like a scab on my foot for like 3 years. It was hilarious and stupid. And then when I finally went to the tattoo artist to get the real thing, what I wanted, which is probably the size of, I don't know, double 2 silver dollars, like pretty large, but not huge. I love it. And I integrated that first little tattoo into it. So I didn't cover it up fully, but I covered it up in part so that it was a part of the new one. And the ridiculousness of my first attempt was still evident. So yeah. That's my story. It wasn't didn't feel ritualistic in the actual doing of it because I was so young and this and that. But I think the expression artistically is the ritualistic part for me there, because tattoo work feels very much to me like it has to be meaningful and artistic and personal to me to do it. That's how I feel about it. And so that's that's what it was.
I feel kind of the same way, but it's really interesting to just observe the fact that anything can be done in a ritualistic way or a ceremonial way, or it can just be done without any thought. And I think somewhere I listened to either a podcast or a meditation, which had to do with Buddhist monks and how they fold their robes. Yeah. Right. And the folding of the robe, and much like the folding of a flag, is a very ceremonial process. You know, like it's very important and very thoughtful, and a lot of energy and consideration put in just to make sure that it's done just right. And there's some value in this that it's really hard to quantify why that brings us to some kind of a state within our being that is contented or peaceful or more focused or more calm. And I can relate from my athletic career in so many ways. There is just ritual after ritual with how I would put my gear down, where I put my equipment, how I lay it out, the order of operations for gearing. Like it becomes like very, 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 very structured. Yeah. And I would look at that, like the monk folding the robe, as in the exact same way I would fold my parachute or don my equipment. These things are, to me, the same thing.
Yeah. It's funny just thinking about it from this frame. Another column that I wrote, another part of my book, is about how I talk about doing the laundry in this way. And it's basically this connection to meditation. So I've almost thought about it as that, like, how do we become meditative in everyday activities? But I like this notion even more of not necessarily turning everything into a ritual, because that feels like overkill to me. It feels like, overdoing it, almost like being too afraid not to do something ritualistically versus selecting, what am I going to do ritualistically and how is it serving me, and being insightfully curious about the feelings it elicits and the support it provides. So yeah, it's interesting. I love it. What else?
So let's switch the frame and tell me about some of the bigger concepts that you had notated before we started talking.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about that, the very classically accepted ceremonies and marking of milestones, which I'm a big believer in. I'm a huge believer in milestones and celebrating milestones and stuff like that. I have an interesting sort of love-hate relationship with certain things, because I'm like, I don't really want to do what everyone else does. And at the same time, I want to mark milestones. And, I think weddings, for example, are actually really great from the perspective of being held accountable and expressing commitment with the people that are there to hold you accountable. I think certainly there's a lot that can be said about weddings that I think completely sucks. So I'm just going to be straight about that. Like, there's no way I'm going to do another wedding the way that I did it before. It's just I have no interest in that whatsoever, because it felt very fake and very forced and very inauthentic. But the creative part of expressing felt really good. But yeah, I think when I think about those very traditional expressions of ceremony, I think it's super important for us to connect to the real depth of why you would be doing it versus the just participation in something society has set up for us.
Yeah, I've been to a few weddings in my life. I think maybe like a dozen, maximum a dozen. I don't say that I've gone to a lot of them, and there's been some scale from like really cool, loose, hippie, fun, very thoughtful, but very deeply ritualistic. Like I went to Moo and Kim's wedding at the eclipse.
Beautiful.
They got married during the solar eclipse.
Amazing.
So, it's like connected to a celestial event, and it was a group of loving friends, and it was very relaxed, and it was just outside and like playing singing bowls and just like really just in harmony with nature and not very structured, just really like just accepting and really beautiful. And it was, complete polar opposite from other types of weddings that I've been to, which have been like highly structured, very religious. Yeah. And there's like all this structure around it. And like you said, and it's not questionable, the value, right?
Yeah. And listen, I don't even have any judgment about people who want to participate in the societally structured traditional thing. I think that's fine too. And it's funny, I'm actually officiating my nephew's wedding in October.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. Like I really love the notion of ceremony. Absolutely. And of really pomp and circumstance around things that are really important. I'm totally fucking into that. So I don't want it to come across like I'm not into weddings. It's more that I think there needs to have this intention. Like I think it would be and weddings is a good example, but this makes me think of Priya Parker and the book she wrote called The Art of Gathering. And
I've read it. Yeah.
It's an incredible book. I highly recommend it to anyone who is wanting to create intentional gatherings and learning how to hold space for the intention that you put forth and enforce the boundaries around the space that you intend to hold, which is really amazing and powerful and creates experiences that can be unusual, but are trustable because they are set forth with this intention and because they are held with such intention as well. So that is what I'm more talking to or speaking to, is that, like, how do we make any of these rituals or ceremonies that we decide to participate in, how do we bring that intention to them such that they can bring us that value that we're hoping to get out of it?
Yeah. Did you grow up in you didn't actually, you've told me before, you didn't grow up with a lot of religion, right?
No, just a little bit of Christian influence. We went to church a little bit, but not really.
Yeah. In my household, there was quite a lot. We did a lot of, church up to 3 times a week. So we would always go on Sundays and oftentimes go on Saturday or a Wednesday or Friday night for like a, Bible study or youth groups or that kind of stuff. And I also had things early on like Boy Scouts, where you would gather on a weekly basis, and it's quite ceremonial. It's a little more loose. It's kids, it's a little more fun, but you put on an outfit, like you get dressed up, you put on a specific robe, like this is the attire for this event. And whether that's like a sports team or whether that's Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whether that's going to church, but there's a special space, there's a container that's been created by some people who've taken the responsibility on of being the holders of that space. And then we know it's going to have a start and an end. And during that time, the curators of that are going to be the ones that walk through the timeline of that ceremony. And it's interesting that there's so many versions of that in our culture, from a book club to full on deep religious ceremonies to funerals. Like funerals are a great example of ceremony in our life, and how we could approach those from any particular point of view or cultural aesthetic or tradition. Really interesting.
I think one thing that's notable about the bigger ceremonial things that we choose to participate in. Like, for example, my nibbling, and this is a word I actually just learned. So in a gender neutral term for niece and nephew is nibbling. And I didn't know that because my nibbling goes by, uses they, them pronouns. And so I was like, what do I call them? I wasn't sure. So actually I was very excited to learn that term anyway. So it was my nibbling's graduation. And one of the things about those ceremonies is that people show up for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this is something that I think is interesting to look at, because that is, I think, important when people show up for you to help you mark an occasion or mark a milestone. And if we only use the things that society has put forth for us, and say you don't graduate from school, say you never get married, say you don't have a baby and you don't have a baby shower, right? Like all these things that are very traditionally held, but there's a lot of people that
Western culture tradition,
that don't do those things. And then they're left with sort of nothing unless they bring forth, like, for example, my best friend Shannon just turned 50. She's amazing. We love her. We've talked about her a lot. And we did a surprise birthday party for her. And she mentioned it like months ago that she like hoped at some point in her life to have a surprise party. And then immediately, as soon as she said it, I was like, oh, well, Del, we're doing that. I didn't even tell her. I mean, of course I didn't tell her, but immediately we got to organizing it. But that's a good example of you wouldn't normally have a big birthday party for yourself at a later age, even though that's totally awesome. You know what I mean? But typically people wouldn't do that unless their family put it on or this or that, right? So it's just something like, how do we advocate for ourselves so that people can show up for us when we don't participate in the societally held traditions of ceremony?
Yeah. Sorry, you got me giggling.
No, go for it. What's funny?
No. I've been to a few of my friends' birthday parties.
I love it.
40th birthdays. So my last trip before COVID was one of my last trips. I had a couple back to back, was to Australia to go to my friend Wildy's birthday party for his 40th. And I also went to Duke's 40th. And it had some structure to it, but it also had some hilarity to it. And I was just thinking about 40 or 50 people dressed in tutus, wearing mustaches and wigs of all colors, sledding down the Alps while enjoying some LSD.
Amazing.
Quite the gathering. Quite the gathering.
Yeah, I'm definitely into birthday parties. I'm into it for sure. Feel free to throw me a surprise 50th. Just saying.
I want to have a big party for my 50th.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I do. I want to have a big birthday. I haven't been very good at accepting self-love with myself. Like I've had a couple of birthday parties. I've tried to be like better at like allowing myself to receive love from others, but I haven't been very good at it. I've done some really kind of depressing birthdays where I just kind of like hide away and stuff. And being the center of attention can be can be hard. And so let me pivot a little bit, because there's so many versions of this, and like it's just endless. But one of the ones that I've been that's more structured, and actually there was an event just last week. The World Games just finished up last week in Birmingham, Alabama, and so that's an Olympic sanctioned event. The Olympic Foundation puts it on, and it's where they trial all the sports, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, there's a stadium with 60,000, 70, 80,000 people in a huge stadium, just like the Olympics. And you have all the countries and all the competitors who parade in just like the Olympics, and they fly the Olympic flags and the World Game flags, and you march around the entire stadium. I didn't attend this one, but I've been to 3 in the past. And I've been lucky enough and honored enough to have won a couple of these. And the ceremony that comes in relationship to winning a World Games or a World Championship or something, that whole podium ceremony and the honoring and the plate, the like step, like having your names called and stepping up onto the podiums and then placing ribbons around your neck and such bottles of champagne or giant trophies or wreaths or whatever the circumstance might be. These ceremonies are really something that's been a test of time for our species. We've been doing this for a very long time, and it's a celebration of our potential, where we challenge ourselves to accomplish some feat physically, mentally, team or individually. Yeah. And then, we challenge each other, we challenge ourselves, and then the best are celebrated and honored. And it's I have to say, I'd been to lots of competitions before I ever went to like a World Games, and there's no comparison between a skydiving World Championship or World Cup and a World Games. A World Games is like going to the Olympics. They're a completely different scale. A World Championship in skydiving might have 1,000 people at it. If you're lucky, it's probably 400 or 500 people. Right. This has 50, 60, 70,000 people, and it's huge TV screens and, amazing cameras everywhere, an incredible experience. So I just wanted to take a minute and reflect on the ceremony of the whole thing, from the opening of the event, fireworks, and the event is now open. There's bands that play and performers and dancers, and then like the full on show to just open the event. And then there's a week of competitive events, everything from sumo wrestling to boat racing to drone racing to skydiving, like every single thing you can imagine. And then all the podiums are given, all the ceremonies are placed, all the winners are recognized, and then there's the big closing ceremony at the end, and the same thing with all the performances and the honoring and the flag carrying and the medal counts and basically the tribes, the countries carrying their flags and seeing how many medals they each go home with. And I can see how this would have been in the years, thousands of years ago, when it was literally like tribal gathering of the different clans coming together and, in the summer and playing their games together. Yeah. And it's just evolved into a modern version.
Gosh, so interesting. I love it. The other side of the coin is, I don't know why my brain's going to this place of like the people who can't get there, who can't access that, you know what I mean? And how it maybe inspires some people and disheartens others, you know what I mean? In a way, which sounds so depressing. I don't mean to be depressing about it, but it's true. There is an exclusionary element to some of these things. You know what I mean?
Everything in life is like that.
Yeah. Oh.
Everything's life is like that. Yeah.
It's like the empathetic part of me is like, oh, those peeps that can't do it. Yeah. It's like, but it's special, and it is motivating in its own way. It gives you something to reach toward. And I know you've shared this a number of times on the podcast, how as wonderful as those ceremonial celebratory peak moments are, they also are not really deeply fulfilling either, per se.
Yeah. I mean, it's like going to a concert, right? If you go to a concert, thousands of people get together, you go and you experience something that kind of unites everybody's energy around a certain experience. You all sing your favorite songs, you hear your favorite band or performer, play something that excites you emotionally, and you go home having had this experience and you're filled with whatever the rush of endorphins and everything from that experience, but those endorphins go away afterwards, and the song still remains like your favorite song, but you kind of like the whole fact of being at the concert doesn't really stay with you. It's just still your favorite song. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, gosh, I don't know. It's an interesting topic. You know, I mean, I think partly why I wasn't necessarily sure what to put down is because I'm still really inundated with a lot on my plate. And so that has kept me from, and I don't say that as a lack of ownership. I'm doing it, I'm choosing it, I'm working through it. But the reason I'm sharing this is I think this is a potentially useful part of the discussion, is to notice when our engagement in these supportive rituals, maybe we don't meditate as much, maybe but we stop making our bed, maybe that, or whatever. We stop exercising, we stop doing our morning yoga, or whatever your thing might be, the supportive thing, to watch for that and see that as maybe a clue to needing a recalibration. And that's where I am, basically, is like I very much still make my bed, but there is also this other part of my current existence where it doesn't feel very in control. And I use that word again, not necessarily as a negative or positive, but as a notion of I don't have enough groundedness in my existence at the moment, because I just came back from a 3-week trip. I love it. Again, this is all wonderful, positive choice. I was very happy to go and spend 3 weeks with my folks and go to Shannon's for her birthday and bring Matil up there. And I'm just now getting home. And so I'm out of that routine. I'm out of those sort of ritualistic activities that ground me when I'm home. You know what I mean? So I'm just now getting back into those. And I'm just now starting to feel the renewed support of those things. So anyway, I just thought that would be useful to share, because I think it's important to watch for when we start to feel that disconnection from groundedness.
And you're on to a really key point for me. Is whenever I travel, I have a very difficult time maintaining my rituals.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the one that I did a great job. This is me patting myself on the back. I brought some ritual with me into my last couple months of travel. I've been on the road for 2 months now. And I brought my athletic greens and I brought my protein powder, and I start my morning by mixing up my green. I start my morning with a meditation in bed for 10 minutes. And then I get up and I go and mix up my greens with some lemon juice, and I mix up my protein powder, and I'll grab a banana and some blueberries, and then I would start my day with that. And just, I mean, it sounds silly, but if you're traveling into a remote little village that only has 12 people that live in it, there's no grocery store, there's nowhere to buy food, I have to prepare to bring those things with me. I have to have the bottle with the shaker in it. I got to make sure I get the lemons for the greens, and I got to make sure I have enough to last me the whole time. And just to not get distracted by, I got to run out the door and get started, socializing with other people that are here, or engaging in whatever project I'm engaged in, running up a mountain or getting to work on something. And just saying, no, first things first. I've got to take care of me. I have to take a few minutes to center myself and be in the right mind frame. I have to put the right ingredients into my body to make sure that I'm ready to move into the next, whatever task set I have ahead of myself. And so I've done really well. And I managed to carry that from, it was easier when I was staying still. I was in one location for quite a while. And then when I started moving around, it got harder and harder, because you're like, okay, now where's my stuff? When I wake up, is it handy? And even worse, I run out. I don't have any left. And now I got to start the day. And I'm like, okay, I don't have any of the things that I ritually prepare for myself. And I feel disrupted. I feel disjointed, and I'm not as focused, I'm not as productive, or I'm just not as grounded in myself. So I think that's kind of like rewind the tape. The whole point of ritual and ceremony to me is to like either highlight and celebrate, like to bring attention to one thing, or to, with the ceremony, like the celebration side of thing, like let's highlight this, or let's put structure around something and let's be ritualistic around it, and let's do it with the repetitive intention as a foundational grounding exercise. And whether that's, like you said, a daily yoga routine, a meditation, even just taking a deep breath on a regular basis, or always giving your loved one a hug, or looking yourself in the mirror and telling yourself that you love yourself in the mirror. There's a good one.
I love that one. That's a good one. Yeah. It really is a good one. Yeah. Hal Elrod wrote a book, I think, called Miracle Morning. I think it was Hal Elrod. But anyway, I bring that up because it points to this idea of having some kind of ritual in the morning that establishes our day. And yeah, I've experimented with that a lot. I've waxed and waned over the years on using it and determining what best serves me in the morning. But yeah, I would invite people to consider that, because I am with you that there's something very supportive and grounding about starting our day with the same things when possible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I've really learned from taking some time to observe myself and see how I react to a number of different ways of entering my day. And so if we're just using this topic as the example, alarm clocks completely set me off. Oof. Like they do not do me good. An alarm clock really puts me in the wrong state of mind to start my day. I'm shaken, frustrated, I'm angered, I'm just disturbed.
Yeah.
And so if I do have to use an alarm, I've learned how to choose an alarm type, like a light alarm or a vibration. Like I do much better with like putting a phone on vibrate and putting it under a pillow or something. So there's just like a little, like a little nudge, rather than have something that's like, like the old, you remember those old alarm clocks that sit? I remember being like 20 years old and one morning just like completely killed that thing. Like the thing went off and I was just like angry young man, just like smash, like that alarm clock's dead. Fuck you, alarm clock. Like I'm that angry that I just annihilate the thing.
Oh my God.
I've gotten to this point where I find these really beautiful, soft pieces of music that start with like a really like light note, and I'll wake up to something that's like really comforting and warming, and I'll set the volume really low so that it isn't abrupt in any way, and ease into that state of wakefulness. And then I hold a minimum of an hour of I'm not available to anybody for anything for that first hour. And so that ritual of like, that's my hour to like come into a place where I'm now ready to be present. And that timing of that it usually has to be like, I won't do anything before 9 o'clock when it comes to like something like this. Like I wouldn't take this call at 7 a.m. because I'm not going to be in a good place. You're not going to get a good version of me. You know,
I'm pretty haggard. This morning. I'm getting here at 8:30 in the morning.
You look awesome. Come on.
Was our meet time. I'm like, I can do this. But yeah, it's so true. I'm with you. Oh my God. One of the pieces of, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily feel like ritual per se, but it feels like it fits into this conversation, is I really do my very best to let myself sleep as long as my body needs. And
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, like I do not like alarm clocks at all. I don't like getting up early, but I am not lazy. And so like it's part of balancing the intensity that I bring to my work and my need for rest and recovery. So it feels like an indulgence, but it's not. It feels very much like it actually is a necessity to the balancing of how much effort I put into the things that I do. And so, yeah, would I really want, we've said this a million times, I'm super, super committed to this show. So here and there, when necessary, when other things won't work, I will get up earlier to do this show, or I will stay up later to do this show, or I will have one call on a weekend to do this show. But like for the most part, I'm not going to do those things because those are part of that like morning routine. That's part of what I have determined are my needs.
Yeah. I want to touch on another version of ceremony or ritual, and it's one that I know both of us celebrate. And it's one I want to bring up because I want to encourage people to go and explore and maybe retry again if you haven't been found this or haven't connected to it. And it is a sacred dance. It is dancing. So there's so many versions of dance, right? There's everything from like dancing alone in your living room, like nobody's watching, just you dancing, and that's a beautiful thing, to couples dancing where you're like really engaged with somebody else, to the full on ritualistic, like tribal, big group of people, everybody dancing together. That could be anything from like a bar mitzvah where everybody's dancing in a circle, any kind of traditional dance, to where I find most of myself now in the modern, like the electronic music, and everybody with a large sound system and getting out and just dancing for hours and hours and hours through the night together and celebrating the freedom of expression. And that ritual, that connective energy of expressive connectiveness and receiving from each other, giving to each other, receiving the music being healing, the expression being healing. I've literally gone to dances with like a busted ankle or a back that's aching and gone home feeling healed. Yeah. Because they're so healing.
Yeah. You know? Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I love dancing so much. It's so clear to me how necessary being in my physical body is to me for balance and sanity. It's so, so important to me. I have and I think a lot of people listening probably can relate to this, of a really busy monkey mind and a very forward focused, anxiety prone mind, where I get depressed sometimes, but I don't get depressed that often. I'm not really ever in the past. My mind doesn't tend to hang there. What it does do is it goes forward, trying to predict, trying to control. That word's come up a number of times. But like, so this notion of harnessing control in a positive sense. And for me, dance and sacred dance and being in my body, being physically connected, just very much connected to my body, helps me get breaks from that monkey mind, from that anxiety prone, forward focused tendency.
It brings you into the present moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's really interesting to just like, if we just self-analyze for a second when it comes to like the ritual of dance and ceremony, if we look at all the tribes of the world, like every indigenous culture around the entire planet, and everybody dances. Like there is a tradition of dance in our species that goes back beyond recorded history, and it continues to this day in every version of every culture, that there is dance and there is celebration. So I've taken, if you know me, I've taken it upon myself, because when I found this ceremony of dance, this ritual of dance, I found another part of myself. I found a part of myself that I didn't know was there. I found a part of myself that was happy, which I didn't have. The rest of the time, I wasn't a happy guy. I was very unhappy. I had a lot of things around my life that were really hard, and I held on to a lot of pain. I had a lot of attachment. I had a lot in the past. So I was behind myself. I was stuck on all this pain that I'd been carrying, and the dance did the same thing for me that you're saying, is it took me out of that past and it brought me into this now. And I forgot about all that stuff enough to just be and be present and celebrate. And suddenly I'm celebrating and my body celebrating and I'm moving and there's something happening and I don't know what it is and it doesn't matter. And so the reason why I play music and why I DJ and all that is because I want to create and hold those sacred spaces for people to engage in that activity so that they can leave that forward monkey or backwards pain holding attachment minds and be present in the moment and connect with others who are also being present in the moment and have those ritualistic ceremonies. And so Desert Soul Collective, I love you guys. Thank you to all my ritual friends. We put on these events specifically for this reason. All my people, all the family. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that. Funny. We've talked plenty of times about the plant medicine ceremonies. Why I want to bring that up at the moment is not because you can listen to plenty of episodes where we go into depth about these, but how I just mentioned that, like, oh, I'm very forward focused. I don't really look at the past. That's one of the things that the plant medicine ceremonies helps me do. Like, whatever pain I might still be holding because I am not looking back there, right? Because maybe I'm avoiding it, or maybe I'm just so neurally trenched to look forward, right? That is one of the things that plant medicine ceremonies help me do, is meet those old things, meet those old pieces of pain that need to come up and out. And it's the value in that space is obviously very just unparalleled. It's completely transformative. But so are these other spaces potentially as well. So I don't there's no hierarchical share here. It's more just to say, for me personally, because I don't necessarily have a strong skill set of going back and looking back, that has helped me a lot to do that and to heal and purge that stuff. So I'm very grateful for that ceremonial space being held as well, because I think otherwise it would be harder, take a lot longer. Not that it's not hard in ceremony, but you know what I mean? Like, it's notable to me that ceremonial space helps me do something that I'm just not typically, quote, good at in my waking life, or automatically prone to do in my waking life.
It's interesting how the different types of ceremony and ritual can move us forward or backward. Like, they can bring us into the present moment. They can help us to anticipate the future and like prepare ourselves for something that's coming, or they can bring us backward. I was just thinking about yoga as you were having that discussion there. And I was thinking about how I did yoga pretty consistently 1 to 3 times a week for a decade. And it's very ceremonial, very ritual. I'm like every Tuesday, every Thursday, out to yoga. And you arrive with like, I have a certain clothing on. I'm prepared. I have a certain mind state. There's a certain level of volume, quietness, consideration, respect for people's space, the different I fucking dreaded it. God, it's just like, I don't want to go, man. I just don't want to go. And I would always feel better after. 100%. There's only ever been one time out of 1,000 times that I've gone where I was like, okay, I don't feel better. I'm angry. I'm just too angry to do yoga right now. But the 999 other times, it's been something where I like, even if I went there going, I hate this right now, I've still felt better afterwards. And so that says something about not just in connecting to the physical body, but the ritual and the ceremony of it all, and just kind of handing over the keys. And this is the control piece that you were talking about, where like, okay, well, making my bed is a form of control, but it's also a form of releasing control, where I'm like, I'm just going to do what I do. And I'm not going to ask a lot of questions about it. And I'm not going to think, oh, why do I do it? Or do I have to do it? Or I don't like doing it, or I do like doing it. I'm just going to do it. And just that act of just doing it is this state of presence. It's a state of being and letting go of, the thinking mind.
Yeah. I very much consider our space a ritual space. The Trust the
100%.
Journey space, it has supported me tremendously throughout the years that we've been doing this, not only because of the content of the conversations. I could cry. I love you so much. Keeping it together. It's important to show up. It really is, and it's amazing the value that you get when you commit to something and you show up for it with consistency and constancy. There's really something very beautiful there. And I love that we can do this for others, like AKA you doing that for me. That's hence the potential tears, is like, oh, Jay is here, so you're supporting me, right? In showing up and believing in me and all these things and showing up in this space. But a lot of what we're talking about is also how we can do that for ourselves and create that sense of being shown up for, showing up for ourselves, showing up for our life in these consistent, constant ways that are supportive.
Yeah. I feel like this is a great ending spot. I really do want to echo everything that you just said in the sense of valuing the consistency and the ritual, it whether it's going to Boy Scouts every week to have that like known thing that I'm going to do, so that's the value in my life. Whether it's listening, being part of creating this episode, or as simple as saying grace and expressing gratitude around the table before dinner. This is a ritual that I've picked up. I've re-engaged over the last number of years to consistently join hands and be consciously grateful for being alive, healthy enough to be present and aware that I'm being nurtured by the earth and the planet, and it's keeping me here. I'm sharing it with friends and family, and life's really not all that bad, no matter how bad we think we want to make it out to be. If we're still here, it's good,
Absolutely.
So,
here's, as we go into sort of the close, anything that we've talked about today, for those of you listening, you can certainly take on for yourself or start to experiment for yourself in your own way. And the Trust the Journey family could be an avenue for supportive ritual. You certainly don't need to. I'm just more saying that it's a space where there are supportive people, and you could, if you wanted to, if you needed this, post there with some regularity, with say, I'm going to post once a week, and just see what that does for you in terms of receiving support if you need that in your life. This is the only reason why I'm suggesting that, is because it might potentially create a sort of avenue to support that you've been wanting or needing. If that resonates, by all means, certainly join us. And as we said, trustthejourney.today is where you find our website, and donate on Patreon in any amount, and we'll add you to that group and welcome you with open arms and great love. And as Jay always says, we express tons of gratitude, so much gratitude for those of you in our Patreon community that are supporting us. It makes the show possible, and just, we couldn't do it without you with earnestness. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed reviewing on this episode. It's been helpful for me to reflect on where I'm finding value and in ritual and in seeing. Actually, I'll close with the statement that I'm finding that when I maintain ritual, I'm doing a better job at self-love, where I'm being more compassionate to my own needs that way. And so I think that's been a big growth piece for me over the last number of years, that I hold more space for my own, whatever simple rituals they might be, so that I move more easily through this journey. And I wish the best to all of you moving through this journey, because not every day is as easy as the next, and some are hard and some are great. And we love you, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, we love you guys.